morning, everyone. This is Nathaniel Lee. Today, I want you to write this number down because we have our own dedicated call-in number now. Is 463-204-0419. So in order to participate in the show from going forward, we purchase our own call-in number is 463-204-0419. And for all the people in various parts of the United States, you could also participate by calling in at 463-204-0419. I'll announce this several times during the show today. Today, I'm happy to inform you that we have a superstar panel with us today. Attorney Vanita, master's in tax, cybersecurity expert, and which crack research attorney, and the famous attorney Milton, who started the new wave in litigation involving videotaping the Rodney King case. So we're so happy to have our superstar panel. Before we get started today, I'd like to just remind you of a couple critical things. We're going to talk about the January 6th hearing this week, but this hearing brings to mind something that a truism that I think everybody's overlooking. That is that our top problem, I think, in America, people think it's inflation. I just think it's mass shooting. Our kids don't feel safe in school anymore. But when did this trend start? Well, it started in 2016. In 2016 in America, folks, there was 179 mass shootings in America. Donald Trump became president the next year. Emphasis on Second Amendment, we had 345, 2019, 322, 2020, 614. The last year of Trump was president in January, we had 693. And this year, we're probably gonna be closer to that 600 number again. Mass shooting in America is a problem, but this problem started in high gear under Donald Trump. The second thing Donald Trump is famous for is the federal deficit. Since 1929, since we tracked the federal deficit, by the year he took president, the federal deficit was right around $20 trillion. When he left office, it was $28 trillion. So since 1929, almost 100 years, about 90 years go by, and then one president created 25% of the federal deficit. Now, the third thing that Donald Trump is famous for is leading an insurrection that attempted to overthrow the federal government. We'll start off with that subject today. They started airing the congressional hearing this week on prime time. And Attorney Banks, Attorney Grimes, I hope you were able to see that. It was on every TV station. I had a really congested week this week in deposition, but I couldn't, I felt the energy of the hearing. What do you guys think?
Well, as I stated before you came in, Nate, I have a thing called a job, and I was not able to see as many of the hearings as I would have liked, or as much of the hearing as I would like to. But I did catch the evening summaries. And as I said to Vanita and Sonia, I thought Ms. Cheney did a very good job in summarizing and exposing the truth about what happened on January the 6th. But as we said earlier, whether it would change any of the Trump people's minds is doubtful. Whether it will change any of the doubters' mind is doubtful, but at least the truth is clear, and maybe history will benefit from it. But I doubt if it's going to change anything today.
Attorney Banks, your sentiments?
I agree with Attorney Grimes in terms of those individuals that are 45 supporters are unlikely to be swayed by these hearings. And by the way, and you may be aware, there are 7 hearings scheduled, and last Thursday was the first of those 7 hearings. And the January 6th bipartisan commission has a goal of laying out in a 7-point agenda that 45 engaged in a campaign to spread false misinformation to the American public that the election was stolen from him, and that included pressuring Pence to refuse to accept electoral votes, which is in violation of the Constitution, to pressure state election officials to change the election results, and that he summoned and assembled an angry, violent mob to march on the Capitol. And then on January 6th, he ignored multiple pleas to stop the violence. And the first hearing, from my perspective, was, and the first point was established in Trump's own words, the words of his supporters, and the words of his advisors, including his daughter, who was an advisor during the administration, Ivanka Trump, and Bill Barr, his attorney general, who testified that the assertion that the election had been stolen was, quote, bullshit.
Well, Vanita, if I may, Nate, I don't use language like that, so I quote that.
I said, quote.
Oh, wait. So I would like to know, did it come out of that Trump was kind of supporting his people finding Pence and somehow administering some justice to Pence for not taking a more firmer stand against the Electoral College vote?
I'm sorry, Milton.
Did I saw some mention of it, but I'm not clear whether Trump kind of wanted his people to catch up with Pence and to impose some type of discipline upon him for not standing firmer against the Electoral College vote.
Absolutely. It was brought out during this hearing that there were these shouts to, quote, hang Mike Pence.
Right.
And 45 is quoted as saying, maybe our supporters have the right idea. He deserves it.
That's cold.
Now he has denied that in a series of responsive tweets, including that, you know, his own daughter was not involved in the issues, in these particular issues, and that she had, quote, checked out, and that her words in support of Attorney General Barr were just out of respect for him.
Yeah.
But she testified that she believed what Attorney Barr had stated, which was that there was no fraud in the election process.
Well, she probably was a little busy and preoccupied with her marketing and branding campaign that day.
Hey, for all our audience, our phone number today has been changed to 463-204-0419. 463-204-0419. And also, when Attorney Banks said 45, she was referring to the past President Donald Trump. The evidence in the case is this. Donald Trump lost the popular vote in the last election by 7.1 million votes. In his first run, he ran for president, he lost the popular vote by 3.3 million. So Donald Trump has secured more votes against him in any presidential election race in American history. So despite the fact that he won in 2016, he still lost the popular vote by a significant margin. So the point is that This whole idea of fraudulent election is such a hoax. And here's why. At the same time that people voted for the president of the United States, they also voted for people running for governorship, Senate, Congress, mayors, council. All these different elections across the United States were conducted at the same time. And for the most part, Republicans did pretty good, except at the top of the ballot. So the point is to suggest or imply that the election was stolen. As an American citizen, you should reject that notion as being just an outright lie. And that's my comment on that issue.
Well, Nate, I've read that there's a great percentage or large percentage of people, especially in the South, who believe that the Confederacy won the Civil War. And that's because the Confederacy has taken great pains to control the narrative of who won the Civil War. They say, well, the North and the Union won that battle, the brutality, but that the Confederacy won the people and preserved the culture, and the preservation of white supremacy is still there, and the righteousness of the cause is still there, even though the actual physical war may have been won by the North. They break it down similar to that. And so they control the narrative enough in that campaign until this day. There are millions of people who say the Confederacy won the Civil War, and they support white supremacy based upon that belief, and they hold on to it. And so the truth doesn't really matter in our world, as long as you can sell your lie well enough. And so Trump saying that he won this election, guys, is not going to go away, in my belief.
Attorney Banks?
I agree with Attorney Grimes, and this disinformation campaign is truly a threat to our democracy.
Yes, it is.
And this is why it is important that these public hearings take place. And keep in mind, as Attorney Grimes has stated, that it is unlikely, these hearings are unlikely to sway those that are firmly planted in President Trump's camp. But it's important, it's critically important that the record be straight relative to what we all witnessed, because they did have, of course, some video footage that was first seen last Thursday. But as many of us watched on January 6th, we watched the rally that was led by President Trump. We watched him say, "Let's march to the Capitol." We watched these things. We saw it with our own eyes. And in fact, some advisors had considered using the 25th Amendment to remove President Trump because of their fear that he planned to disrupt the peaceful transfer of power, which is what distinguishes us as a democracy.
Well, the most stunning part about the information that I saw, what they set forth evidence that the President of the United States was applauding the domestic terrorists for their attempt to, quote, hang Mike Pence, who was the vice president at the time. But there's some things I need to make a comment on. Attorney Grimes said that Civil War people, I studied at American history, and folks, that really wasn't a civil war. I think that the messaging on that maybe diminish the significance of the insurrectionist war or the war of the Confederacy. And here's why. Now, this whole thing about him trying to overthrow the government, we've seen that before. When back in 1862, when the government initially had outlawed slavery, and which you get our next topic today later on. And so these people, this so-called Civil War, resulted from a violent insurrection where they attacked the federal government. And so we saw on January 6th an attempt by violent insurrectionists who was hell-bent on, quote, hanging the vice president. And if that is not shocking to the conscience, remember, folks, that the vice president of the United States was very loyal to this sometime insane president. He supported him throughout. He put a spin on this aberrant behavior. Even the Attorney General, William Barr, he of all people did some, quote, whitewashing of clear evidence of misconduct of the president. And then this same president badmouthed the Attorney General, say he was the worst ever. He badmouthed his vice president. Now, what did he want the vice president to do? He wanted the vice president to ignore the electoral count that certified the winner of the election. In American history, the only time we had anything similar to this was the insurrection back in the 1860s. So we had a modern day attempt, a modern day coup of the federal government. And I'm so thrilled that they are showing this. But Council, there's something that bothered me too. Darchett of Fox News dominate these press conferences, right? But Fox News has decided not to show this presentation. I don't get that. Why would they allow that Fox News commentator come in the newsroom when they decided that they would not show objective news at any point?
You're asking us that question?
Yes.
Oh, I don't know the answer to that, Nathaniel, other than I thought it had been decided that Fox was not a, quote, news station. It was a propaganda station used to support number 45 and his attempt to overthrow this government. Now, why are they letting an entity that's been identified as not a news station still participate in pretending to present the news? I can't answer that question, other than we have so much hypocrisy and unruliness and disrespect for law and order of things. That's the way we operate, bro. That's the best I can say.
Now we have comments coming on our YouTube channel now from Pierre, and his question to the panel is the following: will Donald Trump ever be tried for attempting to overthrow the federal government? That's a good question.
Criminally tried?
Will Donald Trump ever be tried for attempting to overthrow the federal government?
Well, right. Remember, he was impeached twice and he's been acquitted twice. And ultimately, as a result of these hearings, the question will become whether the Department of Justice will decide to move forward. My prediction is that it's unlikely. We'll see. What do you think?
Well, our commentator made a very good point. He said that was a mistake they made after the so-called Civil War. That because after they surrendered, they never prosecuted and tried the insurrectionists for treason. That's a good point.
They made heroes out of Robert E. Lee and all of those Confederate generals who promoted the Confederacy, and they were traitors. is as defined by our Constitution and our law. Today, they are traitors. They are not heroes, but our school children and many white folks still raise them on high as heroes. So I doubt seriously if Donald Trump is going to be tried for anything that he's done. That's the country we live in, folks.
And we saw Confederate leaders and generals idolized across this nation through monuments and statues that within the last, 2-3 years were never even seriously challenged. We're beginning to see them pulled down in the wake of George Floyd's death and other events. But for centuries, these Confederate traitors, insurrectionists,
right,
were honored here in America.
And they still are. They still are. This book I recently read by a guy named Ty Seidule, Seidule, called Robert E. Lee and Me. He grew up, his mother taught him to worship Robert E. Lee. He was a hero. He says Robert E. Lee was higher than God to him. And until this day, he still is. I think it's at the University in Virginia, Lee and Mary, or Mary and Lee, whatever the name of it is. He said that there's a shrine built to Robert E. Lee. There's the Catholic Church, the Baptist Church, the Presbyterian on the campus. And when come time for exam time, the Robert E. Lee Shrine is overcrowded and has a line in front of it for the kids in line to rub the horse's ass and the pet Robert E. Lee in the hope that they pass the exams, not to go to the churches, the religious churches, but to go to the shrine of Robert E. Lee. So, and today still, when they remove one monument, they put up a plaque over here. They are not giving up the recognition of their heroes, guys. That's his observation and analysis of what we're dealing with here. Trump is going to be a hero forever.
Okay, we got our first caller. Caller, you have a question for us today?
Is it me?
Yes.
Hello?
Hello.
Yes, hello. My question to the panel, if they do not try President 45 for trying to overthrow the U.S. government, do we really have a democracy in this country?
What did Ms. Van Bank say earlier? It's questionable. They are attacking him. He attacked our democracy and our rules the whole time he was in office as 45. And they still are disrespecting the rule of law that we live by.
Yes, Counsel, that's exactly what I'm at. You know, with the Supreme Court, Clarence Thomas and his wife, where is the rule of law? If it's not in the Supreme Court, if it's not in the White House, where do you get the rule of law?
It's the same place it's been, brother. For some and not for all.
It exists.
That's where it's at.
Absolutely. So it doesn't exist here.
Right.
Being severely threatened. And that's why these hearings are so important.
And that's why our young people have such a hard time respecting our laws. And I see that in them, Nate. That's my belief. They look at us and laugh.
Hey, caller, what do you think should be done? Oh, we lost him. Okay. Hey, don't forget, folks, our call in today is 463-204-0419. And to call us, this gives us better clarity. Our radio call in, we couldn't hear a lot of time, but this call in number, we get security line so we can have clear clarity of what you're saying. 463-204-0419. the caller made a good point, but we had the same situation occur after the Civil War. The traitors, insurrectionists that survived, and I'm disturbed to find out that they are worshiping a traitor to the United States, that
Right.
generals, Confederate generals. I didn't realize that. That's terrible. And let's get the next caller. Caller, Ms. Metcalf, you have a question coming for speaking today, sir.
Yes, how you doing? Brother Nate.
How you doing?
Thank you for taking my call. All right, doing great. Went out to the conference the other day and had my best day of the year, so I was pretty happy with that. But I didn't know if you guys commented. I just got on, and I read a report yesterday from the New York Times that said Ginny Thomas, they actually have records of her contacting 26 senators. 26 senators. Is that a correct report about not certifying the election? Is that report correct? And if it's correct, I want to echo on the last caller. We know that we have a problem with the people getting the complexion benefits in this country. If she contacted 26 senators to not certify that election, something has. If this is not done, then we don't want to hear anything about attacking other countries. Look at golf right now. They want to badmouth Saudi Arabia, yet I can guarantee you the PGA got 20 companies that they do business with that fund these very politicians that are passing laws against library books and CRT and Pride and stuff like that. So this is phenomenal if that's the case. Did you hear about that, about her contacting those 26 senators? And I'll just see you off the, thank you.
I didn't hear about it, but I
did.
know.
The call is correct. Jenny Thomas is the wife of Clarence Thomas of the U.S. Supreme Court. Jenny Thomas, the evidence has shown that she regularly visits Donald Trump in the White House. And when she's there, she caused commotion because she had these crazy conspiracy theories. But one of the things she did is that she encouraged the fake electors in Arizona to go forward, that she was involved in an attempt to overthrow the federal government. So the sitting Supreme Court Associate Justice with the most tenure, wife, is encouraging people to attempt to overthrow the federal government. This is a crazy world. I mean, this is untenable in my lifetime to think that we ever reach this level of disdain for democracy. This goes back to the Civil War. The caller was correct. We'll get back to Pierre here. Hold on a second. Okay.
Pierre's on the line. Pierre's on the line.
Okay, Mr. Pullen, what's your comment for us today, sir? And oh, by the way, folks, our calling number today is 463-204-0419. So even if folks listen to us on all 8 to 9 radio stations now, you can also call in on this number. And okay, go ahead, sir. What's your question today?
Just a quick couple of topics. He has to be, after they get through the rest of the hearings, he has to be tried by the Justice Department. I know Biden's probably not going to do it, but we can't go on like this. This is why we're here today, because they didn't try the insurrectionists and the Confederates after the Civil War, like you said. And I'm going to skip, because I know you're going to hit this topic, gun control. Trump was one of those people who rescinded the Obama directive on mental health. People, if you're getting a check for mental health, you couldn't own a gun. Trump rolled that back. The question for you, Nate, is why are the Democrats even working with the Republicans on gun control? The blood of all of these killings are on the hands of the Republicans. The Democrats should put out their own plan as a take it or leave it thing and leave it to the folk at the polls. And I just wanted to bring that up because we're helping the Republicans wash the blood off of their hands, and they own it. They own it. And I want to thank you for taking my call.
Well, thank you for calling in, sir. Let's talk about how a democracy works. in our federal government, we have three branches of government, but the Congress has congressperson, and then you also have the Senate. The problem is our Senate now has 50 Republicans and 50 Democrats. And in this Senate, two of the Republicans, Joe Manchin and Christine Sinema, are so-called, quote, conservative Democrats, which mean that they often side with Republican point of view. So in order to get meaningful legislation passed in the Senate, there's a couple ways you get it done. The Senate itself can vote 51. They can take the 50 senators plus Kamala Harris, the vice president, and say we want to suspend that supermajority vote of 60 vote needed on any legislation. But Joe Manchin and Christine Sinema has been against that. So in order to get congressional legislation passed on gun control, at this point in our American history, you have to get Christine Sinema and Joe Manchin to say that they will go along with changing the rule. Now, we've changed the rule to allow Supreme Court appointments, and let's talk about that. When Ruth Bader Ginsburg died right before the election last year, the Republican hastily got Amy Coney Barrett elevated to U.S. Supreme Court. Justice Barrett had no really significant experience in the legal system. She was a law professor, but not really in the practice, not really done litigation. And they hijacked the Obama appointment to the Seventh Circuit and they elevated to the Supreme Court. But the Republicans were able to get her on the Supreme Court right away. Now, the one problem I have with the Democrat is that we've had some reticence to get our people appointed to the courts. It's just been a very slow process, but they're making progress. But so in order to get the legislation passed, sir, you have to have that cooperation in the Senate. So the congressional folks have already passed that legislation. They've taken your advice, your thought process, and they've already done that. But it is stalled in the Senate. And it's unlikely that the Democrat bill will ever have any grounds in the Senate. And now here's the other problem too. The Republicans are better at messaging than Democrats. And so now they're taking down a rabbit trail with talking about the so-called red flag laws, right? So their solution is to have a red flag law. But these 18-year-olds are the ones that have been doing all this killing lately. And so you can't buy a beer at 18, but you can go out and kill 100 people with an automatic weapon. So the point I'm making is, unless we get the Senate to vote on legislation, not going to happen. And so under our system of democracy right now, unfortunately, that's what we're stuck with. And the answer to this problem is that we need to vote and get 2 more senators so we'll have 52, so we don't need Sinema and Manchin, and we'll get legislation passed. That's my comment on that issue, Milton.
And you can believe if the shoe was on the other foot, and if the Republicans were in control, that they would utilize, they would eliminate the filibuster in order to pass those laws that they desire. But when we talk about moving forward against President Trump, it's important to note that over 800 people, close to 900 people have been charged and arrested in connection with the January 6th insurrection, and that 306 have entered guilty pleas. But the most serious charges to date has been a seditious conspiracy charges against the leaders of the Oath Takers and 10 of his associates. And there is a federal statute, a federal seditious conspiracy statute that makes it a crime for 2 or more people to conspire to overthrow the government. And so the January 6th riot was a threat to our democracy. And from my perspective, what we saw and what occurred is a violation of that federal seditious conspiracy statute. What do you think?
I think,
Attorney Grimes?
yeah, I was sitting here thinking about what the gentleman just said in the subject matter that you just dealt with, and what Ms. Banks just said about this judicial statute that is in play. But our politicians, in my opinion, to answer both of those questions kind of jointly, they're not doing what we put them in office to do. That's the simple reality of the situation. They're supposed to be in office to serve and protect the public that put them there. And they are not doing that. They're lying to us. They're deceiving us. They're not protecting us. And we have to do something as voters to change that, or we're going to continue to get the same corrupt, money-oriented non-representation of the people that we're getting today. And I know that's a big general statement. I don't know how to handle it. I don't know what to do about it. But something is wrong with our democratic process in that it has continued to misserve the majority of the people that it's supposed to represent. Simple as that. And we keep complaining about it, but not doing shit about it. So maybe we do need to use, I read some information getting ready for this program today, and my reading says that, and correct me if I'm wrong, I hope I'm wrong, but it said there are 120.5 guns to every 100 people in the United States. And you think about that, there are more guns than people in this country. The profit made from weaponry, not just guns, but weaponry, period, is, we don't even know. We don't even know, Nate, but it's big, big money. These automatic weapons, the killing power of these guns, they're terribly exciting to the youth, but they're terribly frightening to me. When I watch that Buffalo shooting on video, and I have that video, and when you see that young woman, the first person to get killed in the blue dress, she falls like on the game things that they play with the games. It was totally devoid of any human feelings by this person who killed her. And it just was like, I don't know, I had never realized how cruel and dehumanizing the use of those weapons are until I saw that particular video on this young woman, the first to die in Buffalo. And so what do? We keep letting Ted Cruz and them get $300,000-$400,000 to make sure that gun legislation stays in existence. We'll talk about it a few weeks after an incident and then go on. We keep watching people who are the real criminals not be charged, like in January the 6th, and we try to find little laws, and I'm a defense lawyer by heart. I know how to pick and find ways out of situations by the law, but society is not benefiting from our political system to the fullest today. So just wanted to get that off of my chest, Nate.
Well, here's my comment about gun legislation that have been raised. This is very important. Here's my idea as to how we resolve the gun violence issue in America. The first thing we have to use is the 7th Amendment, that's jury trials. Gun manufacturers currently have immunity from suit. So what has made consumer life safe in America has been litigation, folks. For example, when you took a shower today, the water in your shower didn't cause 3rd-degree burns, but before litigation, it could. When you have a fender bender accident, you don't have a broken neck anymore because the 209, the seat belts in the seat were designed so you don't break your neck and your back and headrest. So all these safety features that have been bestowed upon us in America has been the result of litigation. So my point is that we should let this become an issue in America. Why don't we start to allow litigation to proceed on these issues, and we could then find the truth. The second part of this is that we should elevate the age of gun ownership to age 18. And I think that's important. The third thing is that we have to have background checks. But I want to go one step further that this not been mentioned, Milton and Vanita. On background checks, for when people start to get gun ownership, I think that we should have references added on. Let two of their friends put their name on there to say this person is not mentally deranged. So if they lie about it, then litigation can take care of this matter. It will then make people then say, okay, this person is worthy to be carrying a gun. The next thing is that we should eliminate the sale of mass capacity weapon or weapons of mass destruction to be sold privately. Those are military weapons. That's designed to kill enemies, not Americans. And so that's my idea as a point of beginning on this gun legislation, which would never pass. Why? Because those same gun manufacturers, NRA, they're the biggest contributors to these politicians. And that's why it would never pass, because our politicians are bought and paid for. Our people that runs and get elected to the Senate and the Congress, they make a base salary, I think about 186. I want you to think about that. That sounds like a lot of money, but when you have to have a house in DC and one in your district, your net income is probably slightly above minimum wage, because the cost of living in DC, flying back and forth to your congressional district, I mean, is a very extraordinary expense. So the point I'm making is these politicians then get their meals and their gifts and stuff from these lobbyists. And so what we have to do is that we have to clean up the system. We have to prevent these folks from buying out politicians.
Yep.
And that's what the sad truth.
So how do we do that, Nathaniel? We got to make demands on our politicians, right? How do we do that? You say file lawsuits?
Lawsuits is the point of beginning. If we're able to use the 7th Amendment and have jury trials on whether or not the gun manufacturer actively encouraged these crazy shooters to go out and do this by their advertising, their marketing, or selling mass capacity, I tell you what, one $10 million verdict will get their attention. Just one verdict. You know, what changed the water system in America when you take a shower was one verdict. Well, a young baby crawled into a bathtub and turned the water on and got 3rd-degree burns in a bathtub because the manufacturer did not set the water maximum temperature to be enough to kill a person. You know, so in other words, I think that it's time for us to look at a litigation strategy in this thing. Turn loose the trial lawyers. Let's see what we can get done here. I think that we can fix this in 3 years with the right litigation. This thing will be fixed in America. 3 years, that's all it takes.
Well, I guess I'm not that optimistic, Nathaniel, because I see money being too much of a control mechanism, and they have to keep making money on developing and manufacturing new arms. And I just don't know, bro.
I think that we may be at a tipping point from this perspective with respect to child gun violence. I thought that we would have seen some change after Sandy Hook, no
Right.
change. Then we've seen Parkland and so many others in the aftermath of Sandy Hook. To your point, Attorney Lee, we did see a $73 million settlement to Sandy Hook survivors, and litigation is currently being considered against gun manufacturers in the aftermath of these recent shootings. And so the framework is there to build a litigation strategy. What we need is expert, brilliant trial lawyers like yourself, Nathaniel, and Milton, to assemble with others to bring that litigation.
You know, Vanita, we talked last week about the tobacco industry, just a little bit about the
Yes.
menthol cigarettes. We got Black representatives and politicians and Al Sharpton and them selling menthol cigarettes to our community, to our people. Bottom line, that's what they're doing. It's indirectly, and money is controlling their activity. And as long as we make money on a product, it seems as though we really don't care about the destruction that product has on our society and on people. And it's something that's incongruent, it's not, doesn't match right, but that's how we operate, y'all. And that's how I see it. And I don't have the answer to it, but it seems as though we would do just about anything for the almighty dollar.
That's very true. The litigation against the tobacco industry can be used as a model, and the litigation that Attorney Lee described can also be used as a model as well. Remember those cases where McDonald's, for example, was sued for their coffee containers spilling hot coffee and injuring their customers. So what it takes is a relentless focus, creative lawyers that, despite the current immunity from liability that gun manufacturers have, that that litigation is brought anyway, and new law is made.
And where are we going to get that $25 million seed money
to fund the litigation?
To fund that litigation, Nate. That's my problem. You know, you probably got half of that, so I'll get somebody to match, or so about 1,000 of us to match the other half of that. But that's what you're going to have to go into that war, I think.
Okay,
you know?
I don't have that type of money, but let's talk about one final point of departure. We have a few more minutes. This week we celebrate Juneteenth. Historical perspective, folks, the slavery in America was a real problem for 400 years. But in 1862, by proclamation, slavery in America was outlawed. But it wasn't until June the 19th, 1865, by General Order Number 3, by the Union Army General Gordon Granger, he proclaimed freedom for slavery people in Texas. 3 years after they were already set free, because the Union Army did not penetrate Texas, the slaves in Texas did not know that they were supposed to be free. And so now President Biden proclaimed that Juneteenth, June 19th, is now a state and federal holiday. So praise the Lord, folks, that we get to celebrate once again that slavery in America is illegal and outlawed. And I think it's a good thing. And so because of that, we won't be hosting our show next week in honor of the Juneteenth celebration. It's a big thing. A lot of people don't really grasp the significance of that. When Attorney Grime talked about people still worship the insurrectionists, such as the General Robert E. Lee, no relationship to Nathaniel Lee, of course, but
know that, but
yeah. But the point is that we need to take great pride in the fact that the president made this a holiday, and for that holiday, real quickly, Council, what are you guys' plans?
Well, I'm here in Houston, Texas, as we speak. I'm here for birthday recognition of a very good friend of mine yesterday it was. And they started partying weeks ago, and they'll be partying for more weeks because they're late. They're late on recognizing their freedom here. But I tease them like that because I love these brothers down here. But I plan on, let me get back on point. I plan on recognizing it and celebrating it back in California, as the
Okay.
brothers here in Houston do.
Attorney Banks.
I've been asked to participate in a Juneteenth webinar next week. So I plan to recognize the holiday in that regard, but it's a reflective holiday that historically has been commemorated through lectures, exhibitions, festivals, family gatherings, and reunions. And I think as we reflect on Juneteenth, that again, everything comes back to voting, voting, voting. We can't get complacent. We can't get tired. We have to continue to be resilient. You know, we can't overstate the fact that voting matters. And when we talk about why we have politicians in office that don't do what they were sent to office to do on behalf of the people, many times it's because what we see in office, we just say, hey, our vote doesn't matter. And so we have to be careful that we don't fall into that type of thinking, because it's really critical that we vote like our lives depend on it, because they actually do.
Thank you very much for our superstar panel. And ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take next week off and join us in 2 weeks. We resume these important legal discussions. Thank you for our callers, and thank you for our sponsors. And may God bless and keep you. And don't forget, folks, the virus is still present. Make sure you get your shots and your booster shot. May God continue to bless and keep us until we meet again. Take care, everyone.
All right, good day all.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.